Hello, you guys. Welcome back. Today, I have a special guest today. Her name is Sasia, and she is going to be talking about. Well, we're gonna talk about clutter today. And so, I want to first tell you how I met Sasia. She is actually in the mastermind group that I am in with Holly Haynes, and so we have been able to connect. She actually reached out to me and she's like, I want to be on the podcast because you keep talking about all of this like streamlined and how we have to get organized. And she's like, I don't necessarily work with CEOs, but like I could totally help them in their personal life. And so I was like, awesome, we're going to have you on the podcast. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her so she can introduce herself and we can go ahead and get started.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Sasia. I am a clutter coach, a simplicity strategist, and I love working with preschool moms. That's my jam. It's the season of life that I'm in right now with my 3-year-old at home. She'll be 3 next month. I shouldn't probably jump to age her more than she is, but next month she'll be 3, and it's a season of chaos, right? It's a season of chaos, but it is a season of so much joy and so much growth and so much fun if you have the capacity to do it. And I'm just so passionate about helping moms that are in this season of life really create that capacity to be able to still do all the things you want to really be doing, manage your career, run your business, all the things, and still really feel fulfilled and satisfied and love this season of life that you're in, even though it's complete commotion most of the time.
Oh my gosh. So this makes me kind of sad because, well, and happy, but like I have an 11 to 12-year-old. So like the fact that you're like, I have preschoolers, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could take my kids back to being that little tiny, like my nephew is in preschool. So like, I can kind of relate, but like, thinking back to that time, I would have loved to have someone like you in my life because it was complete chaos. And so actually today we're going to be jumping into how Sasia can support you in actually being able to kind of get your personal life organized, especially if you have young kids, because it's completely different than older kids like I have now. And then also, your business as well, because these are intertwined, right? Mm-hmm. And so I want to jump in here and ask you your first question. Specifically, how does clutter hinder productivity and decision making? Because for CEOs, because that's huge, right? We're constantly wanting to be more productive and also constantly making decisions.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And compounded when you have kids at home too, right? Where they're also requiring you to make a lot of decisions all the time and don't touch that,
yes.
Get that out of your mouth, right? No, you can't go here. No, you can't go there. All the things, right? So it's a very energetically demanding time when you are trying to manage all of this stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about, just on a very broad, not sciencey level, about how the brain actually works so that you can maybe get a better insight and not really internalize all this shame that we tend to carry around about why we can't be more productive or why we can't do more things, why I feel like I can't remember anything, or I'm dropping deadlines, or I'm just not managing things the way I want to be. Chances are pretty good it's not actually your fault. It's not because you are not capable of doing these things. Your nervous system is just overloaded with too much information. So a really simple way, so I'm a therapist, and when I was in college, I learned about a really simple way to talk about the brain for people who don't like to talk about the brain, which is me. So if you just take your hand and you put the palm of your hand, like your thumb into the palm of your hand, close your fingers, and then turn your fist kind of sideways. This is like a split view of your brain and what your brain would look like if you were to kind of like cut a human in half. A little graphic, sorry. But this is kind of what you would expect to see. And so when you're getting information, when you're getting any sensory input, it's coming in through your brainstem. This is where all of the information you're getting from all your senses is coming into your body. And then it's getting filtered out into the rest of your brain for decisions to be made about what you need to do with this. Do I need to respond? Is this a threat? Is this something I have to manage now? Can I defer it? Who can help? All the things. That's all happening in this part of your brain, which is where your gray matter kind of is, the 4 fingers on top. This is your gray matter. So this is your prefrontal cortex, your like limbic system, occipital lobe, all the things that you use to make those big picture decisions where you're making choices about things that are happening, planning strategically about your business, managing the finances of the house, doing the menu planning for the week, if that's something you do. All that's happening up here at the top level. But in here, your thumb, this is your survival center. This is where your amygdala lives, your fight, flight, or freeze response, the systems that tell you if you need to eat, if you need to drink, if you need to make your heart beat faster or less fast, if you need to breathe differently, all that's happening in here. So when you're getting information coming into your body, into your brain, your nervous system, right? It's coming in through your brainstem. And where is it going first? Like, where is it hitting, right? It hits here first. It hits your survival center first, your amygdala first. That's where the information goes before it can go out into the rest of your system, into the rest of your brain to make decisions. So when you are spending a lot of energy in this survival center, making decisions within your amygdala, you don't have the capacity. You don't have the capacity to make decisions from that executive center like you would if you had a more regulated nervous system. So that is one way that clutter really makes a big impact, is because on this subconscious level, your brain is always assessing for threat. It's always determining, do I need to respond to something in my environment right now to stay safe? That's what the core function of your brain is to make sure you don't die. That's all it's concerned about in any given moment. That central system is really just, how do I stay alive right now? How do I neutralize any threats? So it's always pulling information and assessing for safety. And if that's happening at an elevated level, like it is when you have clutter all over and there's a lot more information for your brain to try to process, it's pulling so much more energy. And that energy is now stuck in your nervous system. You can't use it in your prefrontal cortex. You can't use it in your decision-making process, or how do I become more productive? How do I balance my schedule a little bit better? How do I make decisions about who's going to pick up my kid from dance recital? Like, you don't have the capacity to manage all of that stuff because all that energy is stuck in your nervous system now. And that's okay. Like, your brain is doing what it's designed to do. So it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you if you feel like you're dropping things or forgetting things, or you feel like you're foggy or not hitting your productivity goals, not managing your schedule how you want, maybe not even achieving your financial goals in your business. All of that stuff, that really comes down to just your nervous system cannot manage more. Your body is doing what it's meant to do. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed for. It's just that you don't have the ability to move it out where it needs to be. You can't prioritize these other things you want to consciously be thinking about because you are using energy in the space of your brain that is most important to your survival. And that's just your body doing what it's supposed to do. So it's not your fault, but you can support your nervous system differently if you can streamline things a little bit more, reduce the input that's coming in, so that you then can free up some of that energy to defer it now into your executive decision-making centers and use your brain for making those big picture plans and pursuing those big picture goals and doing all the things you really want to be doing instead of constantly assessing for threat.
Okay, so that is like awesome, because I've personally had some nervous system like regulation sort of thing. I took like a trauma certification last year, and so we talked about like our nervous system and regulating it and all that. So like I totally can see where having all that clutter or not being organized certainly impacts our abilities to make decisions. And you kept saying deadlines, and deadlines are like a pain point for me right now. Like, I can't, like, when am I setting realistic deadlines given, essentially like how regulated am I to be able to actually put in that time and get it done in time? Do you have anything you want to add on to that? Because I know deadlines are definitely like a huge thing that I think we could dive into a little bit more.
Yeah, I think in terms of deadlines, it's something that I really put a lot of pressure on myself too. And I really had to do a lot of work around what is a realistic deadline for me? Like, what does that actually mean? Because I find, and this is a whole like other element that I wrap into my programs, is this real feminist perspective about how we are taught to think that we are responsible as women for managing everything. We have to do everything perfectly, instantaneously, flawlessly at all times. So to me, when my boss says, here's, this like 700-page task you have to get done. Oh, I can do that like by the weekend. Like, give me 2 days. I'll get it done. No problem. Right. And that's like, It's
That's
not
so me.
realistic. It's just not reasonable, right? But in that moment, I'm feeling all this pressure of like, I have to perform at this certain level. I have this reputation I have to maintain. I have to make sure that, everybody like who needs this after me has everything they need. I want to make sure it's all color coded and like the fonts are all consistent and it's formatted beautifully and all the things, right? Like I'm obsessing over like, how am I going to get this all done? Putting so much pressure on myself to meet this deadline that was ridiculous to begin with. And now I'm adding onto my own plate, right? So I think a lot of that comes down to that conditioning that we experience around believing that our self-worth is on the other side of making sure everyone's happy all the time. That it's on the other side of making sure that we always meet all our deadlines and we're always perfectly organized and our charts are always color coded and all of this stuff, right? That we have to just be doing all this external work, all this proof has to be out in the world for us to be able to accept and acknowledge that we are actually good at what we do, that we know what we're doing, that we should be running this business, that we actually are competent and capable people, right? Like all the things we want to believe about ourselves, we hinge on doing all the things. So it puts a lot of pressure on meeting a deadline, because if you don't meet the deadline, now you're a failure as a human, right? Now you should just close shop on your business and like go live under a rock somewhere because you've like officially failed life. So it's just a whole thing that we need to learn how to talk to ourselves differently about it, reframe what a deadline actually should be, and learn how to support ourselves differently so that our internal dialogue can change. And that allows us to not put so much external pressure on ourselves to meet these unrealistic expectations.
By the way, this is like so good. I love this. This is fun. Like, and I think that's what everything you just said about the deadlines is super important. You really got to be in tune with like what you really can do realistically, but then also voicing that. I think that's really important. Is actually deciding like what is your capacity and can you really get it done? And then like if you can't, like you have to either set a different deadline or communicate that, and that's super huge. As being as far as like I'm an agency owner, so like I have to make sure that my team is like, can you really like, is this a realistic deadline? Because I'm not you, so we got to talk it out. And so that's just why deadlines are huge in my brain right now as I'm like working on it with the team and like all of these things. But that's like super helpful to hear that like if we really start working on how we're talking to ourselves, right, and how we're like expressing all of these things, like it's going to be helpful to set deadlines. Like it seems so simple though, like, but it's really, I mean, it is, but it's not. I don't know. We'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. And I think that's such the beautiful thing about, that's what I love about coaching. That's what I love about being coached by my coach, is that you really get to dig deep into this stuff. You feel like it is this very obvious surface, superficial thing. It never is. It never is. It's always triggering something deeper within you that you really need to heal, that you really need to understand and explore and shift within yourself, that maybe you can't even consciously access right now. You don't really know what that is. But if you can find that root thing and shift it, everything changes. Everything changes. It's magic when that happens. Your whole life could literally transform by shifting one belief in yourself.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So go ahead and share any like specific tips or strategies that you have for these CEOs that are looking to like declutter their lives and their businesses, or like even some nervous system things, because obviously that's like all wrapped into this. I mean, we started with clutter, and that's I think powerful too. We started with, okay, I have clutter in my business or my life, and we went down to nervous system and how we think to ourselves and talk to ourselves. So it's like, okay, it's all intertwined. And so like, what are some strategies that you could give the listeners today to kind of help with bridging that gap?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, oh my goodness, I could talk for days about regulating. That was my specialty when I was practicing therapy full time. So I love it. It's my jam. But I want to really just give you I can give you a simple breath work technique that you can try, and then some like tactical tips that you can implement for the actual decluttering process, if that's something you're interested in digging further into. So what I always start people with as I do breath work with them is box breathing or square breathing. So all you're going to do is just inhale for 4 counts. You count to 4 as you're inhaling. 1, 2, 3, 4. You hold for 4 at the top of your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. You exhale for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. You repeat that 4 times. That's your box. And then
Okay, I'm getting the analogy now, the box. All right,
yes.
cool. Easy to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I give it as like a first breathing exercise, because it's very simple, like 4 things 4 times, right? So that really can help you with being able to just calm your system down. And I personally use it a lot when I'm making a big decision and I can feel my body activating. I can feel the anxiety, like I can feel my like chest constricting, my throat constricting, my hands are shaking maybe. I'm like, I feel the fluster, right? So I just need to take a breath. I just need to take a square and like calm down, right? So
I'm totally going to remember that, because you're like, I need to take a square.
yes.
I love that. Square has 4 sides, 4 points, whatever, 4, 4, 4. Okay, I think I can remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super simple.
Yeah, I love being able to just like have those really easy things in the back pocket that you can just pull out anywhere, and it's something that doesn't look weird. Like sometimes some of the tactics can look kind of like you don't want to do them in public because people might judge you or you like feel awkward about doing them, right? But this one is like so innocuous, no one would ever know you're doing it. So you can practice it all day, every day. I use it all the time. I think everyone should use it all the time. It's amazing. So moving on from that. So tactical tips for how can you start to maybe work on the decluttering process. So the physical aspect of decluttering, whenever you're starting in any space, I always recommend starting with the floor before you do anything else. Start with the floor first when you declutter, because again, we're trying to support our nervous system in this process. So your brain takes a lot more energy to assess potential threats on the ground where things are darker, it's like in corners, they're piled up. It's not as easy for your brain to categorize as things that are clearly lit, eye level, very obvious that there's no threat there, right? Like it's much harder to convince your brain there's no poisonous snake in like the dark pile of clothes on the floor versus on top of your desk where you can like see that there's clearly no snakes here, right? Like it's obviously okay. So start with the floor first, because that will make not only a visual impact, but it will really make a big impact thematically for you with your nervous system too. And that helps just everything feel a little safer to your body when you walk into the space.
Oh my gosh. The snake on the floor. I can't right now. Your analogies are fantastic. Like, whatever you want to call them. Oh my, that is huge though. I never thought about it that way as to why it feels. I actually do that. I didn't realize that, but that would be why. Like, assess the floor. Like, we just need the floor clean. The counters are fine, or whatever. The bed is fine. Like the floors though, they need clean, and it's because it feels unsafe. Like, to me, my nervous system. Seriously, I just learned something huge today. That's mind blowing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And isn't that amazing that your body just knows, right? Like we just have this intuitive wisdom about ourselves if we're willing to lean into it. Like you just know what you need to do sometimes to support yourself. So if you're feeling an instinct on something, it's usually because there's a reason and it's right.
That is huge. Oh my gosh. Wow. Now you just, every time I do an interview, I'm like, I learned something new for everyone. And so I hope you as a listener also learning a little bit something new for that you wouldn't normally learn on this podcast. And so obviously I am already connected with Sasia, but I feel like you need to as well, especially if you have young kids, because nervous system work and really feeling in tune with your body is huge. As I shared a little bit earlier, like I've done a lot of this work and it has seriously helped me be able to, I don't know, think more clearly, as Sasia even shared, and being able to run a business more efficiently and have the capacity to sit down and streamline things and declutter things. And so this is like a huge topic. So I'm really glad that we were able to have you here on the podcast today. And so can you share with our listeners how they can connect with you further if they choose to do so?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, which is afireflowerblooms.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, both at afireflowerblooms. I, as part of my streamlined, simplified life, do not spend a lot of time on social media. So the best way for you to connect with me is to email me. Honestly, that's probably, like, I do check my social media. So if you DM me or you find me on social, like, I'll be around on there, but email is my jam. I just love to be able to have that personal connection with people. So my contact information is on my website too, but it's Sasia at afireflowerblooms.com. So you can email me there if you want to ask any other questions or connect any further about anything. I always love to just help people with even just problem solving. How do I start, right? Where do I start with anything that I'm doing? It just all feels like so much. It's just too overwhelming and I don't even know what to do next. Like, well, the next thing you should do is email me. Is what I'm like, that's the next step you should take, is just contact me and we can sort it out. Like, I will help you with at least like what is the next step you can do today, right now, to start making a difference. I really just believe that this is work that can change your entire life if you let it. And it will give you the space to become someone you didn't even know was in there, someone you didn't even know you could be. That is the most beautiful thing about any work that I do with anybody, is that I love being able to see women step into themselves and see who they really can become and realize that this was actually in them all along. Like, they really had this in them the whole time and they just didn't know it because it was buried under all this other stuff that they didn't need. So let's just clear that junk out of the way so that you can really become the version of you that's already in there, just waiting for you to access her.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That was, I was just like mesmerized with what you were saying. So totally go connect with Sasia, and get any support you can. I was going to say, like, what's the next first step, but it's to just connect with her and she can help you personally. Like, that's an awesome give here to figure out what your next step is, or your first step to really like decluttering things in your life, so that way you can be more efficient and productive. So thank you so much for being on the show. It has been an amazing conversation and I hope the listeners here agree as well. So bye.